starting to come out. So I'm going to get my razor knife and start cutting that and work it around. Hopefully I won't distort or ruin the case. I think I might have found the problem. Pretty sure this thing hasn't worked in a really long time. I mean, it's just completely ate up with corrosion, and there's certainly no hope of connecting anything back to this and bringing something back alive. And yeah, one of these pins came out here with the lid. All this shit is just some kind of transistors. They're just gone. Sorry about that. So yeah, there's screws that hold the circuit board into the housing, and it looked like a urethane sealer around the perimeter. What a damn shame. This was a very well made computer box, but it was made with connectors that were not sealed. The ports were not sealed, so water could get in through these holes. That plus the plugs had bad seals, so water got in the plugs. And if I had to guess, this is one out of like 6 of these things. It's a miracle that any of them work, looking at how this thing's made. So I don't know what to do next. Okay, so I'm sitting here thinking this through. This thing hasn't worked for years. So the problem that I'm having now, there's no way it could have anything to do with this. So that's actually good and bad, because it worked fine without this. I mean, there's just like no way the power leads were even connected to this thing. It shorted out sometime in its life, I guess, and it burnt the frickin' power legs off of it, is what must have happened. I don't know how it didn't blow a fuse. The power leads are fused, but I mean, this thing's cooked. It's not just corrosion. That looks like heat damage. So yeah, I'm gonna need someone with a scanner to plug into this thing to figure it out. It's certainly over my head. I already checked all the fuses. The only other thing I could think, there's only 2 possibilities that could have made this happen other than pure coincidence. There were a couple of instances when I was shortening this wiring harness, that big fat one that's in there, that when I cut the wire, I cut one at a time so I wouldn't mess up, okay? And like I was showing earlier, I was like half of the harness was a foot too long, so I couldn't put it into a nice flat bundle to tuck up nicely up against the wall in the corner, which you can see right there. This guy. All right, and you know, hindsight, if I would have known I was going to have trouble, I could have probably just pulled all the excess and have it loop around up there or something, but I decided to go all the way. So I cut one wire at a time, like this, right? But like I say, there were a couple incidences, and I still remember this red with a white stripe. When I cut the wire, the end flipped out of my hand, and I had to go search for the other end to reconnect it. It's pretty much impossible, since I was doing one wire at a time, that I got anything crossed. Okay, so there's that. All this right here is not going through the computer system. This is the electric mirrors. All it's doing is getting power. That was another mystery for a while. Out of the side of the fuse box somewhere, the power supply for all this popped out. And it took me a while to find where there was an empty socket like that one that would run it. And I chose this one right here because it comes on with ignition. That's why you can see this is in a separate deal here. This is just for the electric mirrors. So that's the only two mysteries, quote unquote mysteries, that occurred when I worked on this. All this stuff I never disconnected. I just unscrewed this and that from its original bracket and screwed it to this wall. Alright, so the only possibility of something being wrong here is if there's a broken wire or a wire being yanked or something. I've had all those plugs unplugged and they're all nice and clean. So there really should be no issue with this. This is the smart switch control box, something or other. And all these guys, they should be fine. These are my control switches. All right, so there's nothing out of the ordinary here. Just thinking this through all over again. And all this was just unplugged from underneath. This actually had an extension on it. I'm trying to remember these. Oh, these were cut. These go to solenoid valves, I think, down there in the refrigeration lines. And up in here, I spliced them. There's one right there. And that was, I mean, they're just current flow to a solenoid valve. So even if I got one of these polarities backwards, which I'm sure I didn't, they're color coded or striped or something. And I did those one at a time. So, gosh, I don't know what's going on here. Over here, there's a giant gang plug. This thing. But all those pins looked fine. And all those guys, I think I had these two unplugged. They looked fine. You know, it's just freaking anything could have happened, right? You know, I've been yanking on these things and pushing on them. Who knows what happened up in there, if anything. Oh, there were a couple of wires that were hacked into from I don't know who. But I respliced them. They were cut and had butt connectors in something over here somewhere. And it was part of the don't forget your kids in the back seat of the bus thing. Warning system. And I had all that cut in the clear way long ago, and that wasn't causing any issues. It was just tapping into power sources and maybe like the neutral line switch or something. Gotta keep looking. Hey gang, it's Sunday, June 8th, I think it is. So I'm doing a little bit of preventive maintenance here since we were having electrical trouble with the bus. This thing's got a bunch of computers like this one. This one's called the bulkhead module. the chassis modules below us down there. It's similar looking device to this. Those two are the two computer modules that control everything on your basic chassis. All the headlights, even the starter solenoid, and everything runs through these darn things. Yes, it's a higher level of sophistication than I'd like, but hey, it is what it is. So we got a bunch of weird stuff going on. I don't remember if I already recorded this, but after the Hurricane Dorian, I came and turned the bus around, and I noticed my side marker lights were not working. One headlight, this one, would come on with the ignition and wouldn't shut off unless you turned on parking lights. Then it would shut off. These markers didn't work. The blinkers did not work. The front markers did not work on either side. The backup light did not work. Backup lights did not work. The backup alarm did not work. What else? The windshield wipers did work. And that's about all that I tested. The tail lights worked. All the rest of the clearance lights worked. The rear directionals worked. The brake lights worked. But that was it. So I was pretty bummed. I thought it was something that I did when I cut out the one computer in the back. This guy here, this is what the chassis module looks like in design anyway. It's got even the same number on it, but this is down halfway down through the chassis. This is the accessories add-on. I forget the right equipment term for it, but it's completely fried, and it's been that way for years. When I bought the bus, it was like this, I'm sure. They didn't put any dielectric grease on these plug seals, and water got in them, right? And it just freaking fried it completely. So I was really bummed about this, and so since it wasn't working anyway, I just removed all the wiring, right? Which is that harness. It's got 3 hot wires, a red little signal wire, and a ground wire. It's about it. And the output, and it had a data input. The green and yellow wires are your data inputs, and then it had a few accessories that I no longer need. So I don't need this anymore. So I figured, well, let's just take it out, right? Well, it was after I took this out and after the hurricane, and I couldn't remember which was the turning point when all the problems started happening in the bus. So I was really bummed, and when I moved the bus, oh yeah, another thing happened. See me with my flashlight. I'll show you what happened. I have a fluorescent light fixture in here, just temporary. I got it screwed to the ceiling now, but it was hanging from little cords off some holes in here, and it fell, broke one of the bulbs, bent up the housing, which I've already straightened it, and I put a new bulb in there. So that's all back to normal. It scratched my window tint as it fell, which sucks. And so I'm gonna have to live with that forever. So it's like being bummed. I decided I'd just clean up, and I took all the crap out of here. I just left the wiring because I got nowhere to put it right now, and I don't want to get rid of it yet. So we're all cleaned up, and I took these things here because they were a hazard. If you were to accidentally stub your toe on this thing, wearing shoes like that, you can get cut pretty bad. So I stood that up. These are potential templates for these areas here, either side of the door. So that's why I'm hanging on to that. And then I checked all my fuses twice and was tinkering around. I fired it up. The AC was running, but it wasn't getting cold. So I wasn't sure that there was an electrical problem. So I put my gauges on it. It was way low on Freon, so I got a leak. I know there's a small leak up here in a valve, but I put the fluorescent dye in it when I filled it up, so gonna have to get around to checking where the leak is on that. It's been sitting now for about a year since I got the air conditioner working, so ain't no telling what's going on. So I ginned it up with more Freon, and the AC is working normally. Everything's working fine except those lights. And then yesterday I decided to take a chance. I've been afraid to pull these plugs out because I didn't know if I was going to find something like that other computer all burnt up, or if it would break any of the terminals, if there was a corroded terminal. So I went underneath the chassis module, they called it, which looks just like the one on my table saw over there, and one of the plugs had water in it, and I blew the water out. I took all the plugs off and made sure I blew it out really good and put it back together, and all the lights are working perfectly fine now. So I bought this dielectric grease at Napa today, and just now I took this off, crossed my fingers that nothing was bad here, and all these terminals look fine, no water intrusion. So I'm gonna clean that out really well and apply the silicone grease, and hopefully we're doing the right thing here, but I want to make sure that these things are sealed up the best that they can be. And oddly, I don't know why, but when all the lights started working, the windshield wipers stopped working. And I don't know why. And what I found out by the literature is the windshield wipers come off of this thing. The power to the windshield wiper motor comes directly out of these terminals, one of these. So I thought, well, geez, maybe this thing's bad. But I'm looking at it now, and it looks fine. Unless, I mean, they all look dry, right? They're dry. So I don't think we have a water leak problem here. Gosh. So I got my hemostats here so I can pick out the little plastic thing that came off the plug, which is this thing right here. This is supposed to be snapped onto the plug. Alright, so yeah, up in there it looks nice and clean and new looking. Thank goodness. Every one of them look nice and clean and new inside. So they're sealed. They were sealed anyway. Alright, so this computer is probably good. The literature I have says that they are your last resort to fixing anything because they're quite fail-safe. They're current protected and all kinds of neat stuff. So hopefully they're good. I was cruising around on the internet, and these things here, I've seen them used for like $600. I can't even imagine what a new one would cost. They're well over $1,000, I'm sure. So at least this one looks perfectly fine. The chassis module maybe has got issues, but those are the two that are really needed for this thing to work, for this bus to run, for headlights and directionals and all that stuff. It must have these two computer modules, and the dashboard display is another computer module. The last of the accessory modules is in the back, and I'm pretty sure that is entirely for the air conditioning system. I haven't chased all those circuits down, but if that were to fail, I'm pretty sure I could figure a way to redesign the electrical system to work without it if I had to. So that's what's going on. It's good to know this computer doesn't look bad. Oh my gosh. Everything's reassembled. I put a light coat of grease, the dielectric grease, behind this piece. With this piece removed, there's a smaller diameter of black plastic. This piece here, oh, there goes my light. That little piece holds the silicone seal in place. Let me get another battery on my light.